Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes this afternoon. I'm joined by Chris McElwain and Kevin McCluskey. And we're here to talk about Celtic 3, Hibs 1. And a great performance, I felt, overall, really dominant. And some of the halftime comments about some of our players. Chris, you look at that, you think, we're not going to be firing on all cylinders all the time. Adam Ida was getting it tight in the comments section. He was part of a performance today that was, comprehensive, really, in terms of the outcome of that. Hibs are a team that are on form. They've done really, really well in the second half of the season. But we seem to have this momentum about us at the moment. And I think that was maybe behind Brendan's thinking when he was making the starting 11 decisions as well, Chris. So we continue on. We continue on. We're in the rhythm. And that was a good performance. Good, well-controlled performance for me.
It was, and I want to give my learned colleague his credit. He called it at pre-match 3-1 prediction. I was praying for that. Just another goal in the second half there, just so my prediction would be true. But no, Kev takes the glory. But no, I thought overall, look, it was a very dominant performance. I think, if anything, I was expecting a wee bit more attacking impetus from Hibs, given their position in the league and what they've still got to play for. But I think we just controlled the game through virtue of our quality. We spoke about a little bit being a little bit wasteful in the first half, and I think we were, despite our dominance. I think some of that, as we've spoken about, came largely from Adam Ida, wasting good opportunities by being offside. But I do, as I said at halftime, I think the measure of a player's character is their persistence and their resilience when they're under a bit of pressure. And Adam Ida's absolutely under pressure. I think every striker that plays for Celtic's under pressure, irrespective of the circumstance. And for me, just he plugged away, and he had a hand in the first goal for us, the equaliser, and then he scores an excellent striker's goal. And he was unlucky in the second half not to get a third goal with one that looked over the top. But he actually did really well in the box, holding the ball up, making the space. So I think he can be satisfied with his performance. I think he'll be frustrated with elements of the first half, but I think overall he can be satisfied. Man of the match, I heard, went to Reo Hatate. Can't argue with that. I thought he was outstanding. I thought he pulled all the strings. The Hollywood passes were largely coming off, which was great, and a brilliant side foot kind of stroked finish after a lovely little bit of one-touch football between Kalmak and Engels in the box, and it really was the icing on the cake. But I thought there were lots of good elements to our play today. I thought Trusty massively improved his performance in the second half. That was notable for one really good clearance that he made, or one really good block, rather, in our box. And chances that Hibs created were few and far between, but I thought what they did produce, we looked comfortable. And apart from the goal we lost and the cracking save from Schmeichel in the first half, I don't think Hibs really tested us much. And I have to say, yep, Joe called it. I actually would have said Ralston would have been a candidate for man of the match today. I thought overall, he was excellent. I think the way you measure Tony Ralston's performance for me is that I've not felt Alistair Johnson's absence the way I thought I would, and that's not to disrespect Alistair Johnson, know how good a player he is. But Ralston's come in and he's just looked solid. He's looked dependable, he's looked exactly the player we want. And that hoik, I'm going to call it a hoik, that Maldini-esque hoik that he made for the assist was something else. So yeah, lots to be happy about today.
What's a hoik?
A hoik, it's just one of these, hoik.
A hoik tour? No, that's different. Right, let's have a look at some of the comments. No, absolutely. It's one of the games, I think, that there's a comment coming in here, and I'm going to bring it up because it was at half-time, there were three players that were getting it in the neck, and it was the three big signings that we've made this season. And I just think that when it comes down to these players, guys like Engels and Ida and Trusty, they have been on the firing end of a lot of criticism in our comments section. I look at the social media output closely. I can see who's getting stick. These three guys get it quite regularly. I thought at half time, and I said this, I thought Ida had a poor first half, but he scores the goal. I thought Trusty could have been a lot stronger at Hibs goals, as could Greg Taylor. But Engels, I didn't understand that. I really didn't. And I know that I've championed Arne Engels all season. Well, it is another assist. It's another assist that he's got there, Kev, as well. So you're looking at his season in its entirety at the end of the campaign, and you're thinking, how many goals, how many assists? There was some other stats coming through during the week. He's Celtic's Young Player of the Year. And I really think we need to get to the point where signing £10 million players doesn't even, really require any kind of criticism, because it needs to be normalised. If we want to progress, we need to go out and sign another 3 of them this summer. Some of them will be 21. Some of them will need developing. But we just need to get over the fact that Adam Idah cost us 9.5. If we'd done our business better, we would have probably got him for 6.5. It's done. It's done. His return is 19 goals scored this season. You would put money on him if you were a betting man that he's going to score 20 or more goals this campaign. He's scored big goals for us. He's done well in Europe. He's got a Scottish Cup final to look forward to. He scored against Rangers again the other week. I just feel as though we need to get over the price tag, Kev. Yeah, it's big money. It's not our money. They've got lots of money in the bank, Celtic. So let's go and continue to buy, £11 million players with bags of potential from the Bundesliga at the age of 20. I mean, if we get another couple of day guys in the summer, I'll be delighted. And I just, some of the comments about Idah at halftime, worst player I've ever seen in a Celtic jersey and all this nonsense. It's just, it doesn't add up for me. We've had a lot worse. Idah has been a massive part in our success this season, and he was on another day could have scored 3 or 4 goals. Kyogo might have scored 3 or 4 goals, but Adam Idah scores a goal and a 3-1 win, a comfortable win against one of the best formed teams in Scotland. What's there not to be happy about?
Sure, someone will find something, Paul. I totally agree with what you're saying there about the transfer fees. It is something that we shouldn't really concern ourselves with. We, as the fans and all that, and the 3 of us sitting here, none of us agreed on the transfer fee for those players. None of us know what went into agreeing the transfer fee for those players. Was it purely based on his current ability? Was it on his potential ability? Was it on the selling club needing to reinvest that money? And, they don't want to be... Well, they've got to sign a replacement for him, so there's replacement value. There's so many different things that go into it. And we're signing from... In the case of Engels, we're signing from a bigger league in Germany, so we will pay a higher fee. In the case of Idah, we're signing from the Championship in England, which has also got bags of money. So we are going to pay bigger fees. I agree. That's the type of fee that we should be trying to normalise a bit more. But probably for the next couple of seasons, it will still seem a bit odd because we haven't done it in the past. It's usually been the case of our big marquee signing's been a £3 to £5 million player. And then we've gone and signed a dozen £1 million and £2 million players to complement them.
Mm-hmm.
We should move away from that model entirely. It should be every year, let's go out and have a £10 million as a benchmark player coming in, someone else around about the 7 million. And then, like you say, what have you got? Between 70 to 90 million pounds sitting in the bank, depending on where you read. The money's there that if we want to go and invest it in a big name, we can do it. So yeah, we need to normalise it. I'm not sure as well though how much of the criticism really comes from the Celtic fans or if it's led from the media. And then that goes from the, is it jealousy? Is that the right word to use in this case?
Yeah.
Where the rest of the league can't spend £5 million combined over a transfer window, but we can spend double that on one player. So then I think that gives an inflated expectation that not Idah, in this case Engels comes in, but also Idah, they come in and they're supposed to absolutely steamroller the league. It's not going to happen, right? We're signing good quality players that are better than the league that they're coming into. We'll judge them in Europe as well as judging them in the league here. And Engels has got 3 or 4 assists in Europe this season, plus a couple of goals. Folk will say that they're penalties and it doesn't matter. Folk say they matter when he misses them, right? They matter. Idah, the game down at Aston Villa, where he gets his 2 goals as well, massive, right? These guys have come in. They've had good games. They've had bad games like everyone else, but they're picking up awards. They're picking up winners' medals, and right. I've watched Celtic teams over the years whose centre forwards have not scored 20 goals in a season. If Adam Ida's having a poor season and he's going to hit 20 goals, I'm all right with that. I'll wait for him to have his good season when he hits 30 and 40.
You know, the big thing for me, I'll bring this up, Kenny, because it's a great discussion point. I've heard it all season, not just from Celtic fans, but as Kev says, the media have fanned the flames of it. We touched on you remember the penalty against Hearts where he's getting it in his lug from two relegation battling Hearts players. Kenny Bartley brings it up, getting it wrong, PG. We need more from Engels. Now, in terms of the fee, let's start with that, Kenny, right? You're bringing a player in who's made over 50 appearances at the age of 20. He's made over 50 appearances in the Bundesliga, right? Which is widely regarded as one of the strongest leagues in European football, if not world football, right? And he's 20 years of age. And if you want to buy a player, just like this summer, if we go into the Bundesliga and we're going to try and buy a 20-year-old who's got that experience in that league at that level, you're spending £10 million plus on him. Just otherwise, you're not in a discussion, right? So this is what I'm saying about the transfer fee. In terms of that player, you could sell him tomorrow for what we paid for him. He was worth the money that we paid. Then you get that out of the way and you start talking about his performances. You can scrutinise his performance today. I scrutinised his performance against Rangers. I watched the game back. I watched the game twice. And I was looking at him because the first time I watched it bad in the fan zone, the Acsom fan zone. And I'm listening to Celtic fans around about me who don't think he's having a good game. So when I'm watching it back the following day, I'm really looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, what's he done wrong here? And I'm looking at the passes that he's not completed. 2 in the entire game. 2 passes he didn't complete. One of them stuck in the mind because it was a really poor free kick. He had a great free kick today, created a brilliant chance from a free kick today. But you boil it down to all the data that people like Alan Morrison have, pack passes. A very interesting thing on Friday in relation to him and Bernardo is they're not miles away from each other, but Arne Engels has obviously played a lot more minutes than Paulo Bernardo has. But the base data that we're looking at the moment is 50 games played at the age of 21 now, 50 games played, 10 goals for him, and then that will be caveated by his detractors by saying, but they're penalties. But, a penalty's a penalty. You know what I mean? It's still got to be scored. 13 assists. So 23 contributions, right? Now, you've seen the player that Matt O'Reilly became at Celtic. You look at his first 12 months in a Celtic jersey and you compare the stats, nowhere near as good as Arne Engels. Nowhere near 23 goals and assists in his first 50 games for Celtic. It wasn't really until his final season at Celtic that he really stepped up the pace under Brendan Rodgers. In Brendan's first season, we spoke about what could Brendan get out of him. Well, he got goals out of him, didn't he? And he got his big £26 million moved into Brighton. So Arne Engels is going to continue, Kenny. This conversation is going to continue. I disagree with you. You disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine. He's taken off in the second half, Chris, and he's taken off for what should be our future. If Club Brugge can produce a player like Engels, why can't Celtic produce a player like Engels? That's the bigger argument for me. And obviously, there's young McArdle makes his debut, and he comes on, and you're just thinking to yourself, "Wow, 17 years of age. I had just given up my paper round, and there's that wee boy out there playing for Celtic." And I'm watching him, and there was certainly one moment where you're thinking to yourself, it would be easy for him just to go into his shell, but he didn't, and he won the ball back and then made a place through Kenny. So you're hoping that players like McArdle, some of the other guys that we've watched, young Turley earlier on this season, will get some minutes for Celtic. But my point is this. When was the last time we introduced a 20-year-old into the first team, Chris, who's gone on to play 50 games in a treble-winning season? I'll tell you who it was. It was Kieran Tierney. The last time we had a 20-year-old playing 50 games of football in a treble-winning season that we had brought through from our academy, it was Kieran Tierney. And we all know what he went on to provide. I think we need to get off Engels' back.
I completely agree. I think there's an element that's more than the transfer fee. And look, I actually understand why there's so many divisive opinions about Engels, because I think it's the type of player he is. And I recall there being similar points made about Neil Lennon when he came, because Neil Lennon, when he first joined Celtic, came for big money. But Neil Lennon was much more of an established player than Arne Engels at the time, and less of a potential player, if you like. And we all remember what he brought to the table when he came to Celtic as a player was phenomenal. I think Engels has got slightly similar characteristics, albeit they're not a like-for-like match, and I'll make that point strongly. But Engels, for me, he's not a flashy player. It's not his style. He's not a Reo Hatate style player who'll do the Hollywood passes and the forward runs. I think he's a very efficient player. It's the way I describe him when I watch him. I think he's very tidy at times. I like his movement. I think he makes himself available at the right moments. I saw it on a few occasions again today. He's always willing to take the ball, but he's not the quickest, and he's not a guy who I think is blessed with brilliant dribbling, although he tries on occasion. Doesn't always come off. Sometimes he tries to be back heels and the back flicks, and sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. But what I can see is I can see a player who has got the ability to boss the midfield. I think he needs to improve his physicality. I think he needs to improve his ability in one-on-ones. I think he needs to certainly improve his goal scoring from open play. I don't think anyone would argue from that. But you look at what he has done this season and continues to do this season. He gets criticised for penalties. Well, look at the players around him prior to him becoming the penalty taker. Look at the players around him who missed penalties. Look at the amount of rotation we had in our penalty takers until Arne Engels came here. So there's obviously a strong mentality there. You look at some of the fantastic long passes that he's made, the passes in behind that really feed players like Kuhn and Maeda and play to their strengths. That's obviously something the manager's identified that Engels can bring to the table. I'd like to see him do it more, because when it comes off, it's absolutely spectacular. But there's obviously some real good vision there as well. And we've seen in Europe, he's got the ability to step up and play at that higher level. And please, for the love of God, take into account his age. He's 21 years old. Right, he's 21 years old and he's played at the top level in the Bundesliga. He's came to us. He's adapting to a new country, new language, new expectations, probably higher expectations than he's played under before. And he's, for me, his career is absolutely on the right trajectory, and we've got the right manager, I think, to continue improving him. And he played alongside a player today that we've spoke about a lot, Reo Hatate. Look at the improvement, I think, this season in Reo Hatate under Brendan Rodgers, right? And this is Rio's, third, fourth season, possibly longer, maybe even fifth season with Celtic. And I think we're now starting to see the best from Reo Hatate because he's getting regular minutes under the manager. I think you'll see a vastly improved Arne Engels next season. And that's not denigrating his performances this season, but I think he'll take a step up next season. And I think he's earned and deserves the time to do that. But at the same time, I do respect people's opinions, because I think there are different expectations on a player at Celtic when he comes for that kind of money. So I do get where the criticism's coming from. I just think you have to contextualise it in a couple of different ways.
No, I agree with that. And it's an interesting comparison, actually, to bring Reo into this conversation. So Reo comes in the January of Ange Postecoglou's first season. This is now obviously his fourth season, but he's played 3.5 years, Chris. And there's been a lot of talk around whether or not he's the guy that's going to be leaving this summer. There's the three names that I see mentioned constantly are Kuhn, Maeda and Reo. And some people think that Reo has come to the end of his cycle at Celtic. I found it really interesting in the press conference on Friday, Kev, when Brendan Rodgers spoke about Rio's performances, and he said that it took him a while to get into his head, and now he finally. You just know that's Brendan's kind of philosophy. He actually wants to tap into the mindset of his players, and I get the sense that if he can't, then it won't work. He's not one of these guys that will just let someone go away and do his own thing. And that's probably why, bringing it back to the Engels point that we were making, apparently Rodgers was unhappy with Engels against Rangers, even though if you were to look at his individual data, and passes completed, etc., it's probably very, very good. But Rodgers thought he's not doing what I want him to do. He's not in the right position. He's not in the right area of the park. And inevitably, if that happens, you get hooked. And if it happens too often, you're no longer at the football club. I found these comments about Reo really interesting, Kev, because we've been kind of hinting at this from the outside looking in. He wasn't the first pick. You look at Brendan's first competitive game back, it was against Ross County, wasn't it? And it was Flag Day at Celtic Park, and David Turnbull started the game. I think he got a goal. He got man of the match, maybe an assist. Matt O'Reilly was giving him big licks after it in the interview. Reo was kind of like the forgotten man at that point. And then he had injury troubles in Brendan's first season, but he was in and out of the side. Bernardo was playing the Champions League games, you'll remember, Kev. That was a big discussion point. So it was very interesting for Brendan to actually confirm, maybe I didn't fancy him, maybe he didn't fancy me, but now we've got a mutual understanding here. And interestingly enough, as Chris says, we're seeing the best form of Reo's Celtic career, and it's under Brendan Rodgers. And I think because of that, I want to see him stay for another season. I don't think he's hit peak Reo at Celtic yet. I think we can get more out of him, Kev. The caveat is always, if a player wants to leave, let him go. I don't want to keep anybody who doesn't want to be at Celtic. It causes problems. It causes, even subconsciously, if you're no one to be there and you think you're trying your hardest, it's margins, isn't it, Kev? So where are you with Reo? He was brilliant today, wasn't he? He was fantastic today.
I thought he was fantastic today, yeah. Chris has mentioned that he got the man of the match in the stadium, and he got man of the match in my household as well. I thought he was tremendous. Getting the goal when he did as well just kind of rounded off a brilliant performance from him, because I felt in that first half, before we got the opening goal, he was the one that was most likely to create something for us. He was playing the probing passes, the kind of Hollywood passes that I think Chris called them before, but they were working, because he does it every week. He tries those passes, and sometimes the Ida effect with him, then you're frustrated and you're pulling your hair out because the pass just isn't coming off. Today, everything he tried pretty much did come off, and I was delighted for him to get the goal, which he thoroughly deserved. That's the Reo that we want to see every week. The frustrating thing is that we don't. But I guess what Rodgers is getting at with all is trying to get into his head as well is Reo tries that every week. So I don't think he really hides in games. If he gets the ball, he tries to play that forward pass. He tries to create things and make it happen. And we need to accept that it's not always going to come off. He is that word that you used the other week when we were discussing him, Paul. He's the maverick. Mm-hmm. And Rodgers' teams and systems don't suit having a maverick player in them. And that's probably why he was on the fringes of things to begin with. And David Turnbull plays because Turnbull's a systems kind of man. And he's not flashy, and he'll just do what the manager tells him to do. So it's taken a while. It's taken a year and a half or whatever it is, really, to get into Reo's head. If you want to play for this club and my team, this is how you have to play. It really does seem as if it's got in there. I'm delighted about that, because Reo's too good a player for us to not have working for us. And now we've got a Reo Hatate that he tries the Hollywood pass. He still does the things that will frustrate you because he does it at the wrong time or in the wrong areas of the park. But we're seeing that that's becoming less and less of a feature in his game. He is becoming more productive. The game against St Johnstone, I think, is the last time that I was actually on, and that's the one where the Maverick comment came out. Because he was trying things and nothing was coming off for about 40 minutes. And then bang, 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 he's got an assist of hat-tricks before half-time. Mm-hmm. And that's what he can deliver for us. So, and his stats are shown with goals and assists that this is his most productive season for us. At times, I don't think it always looks like it's his best. If it makes sense, like some of his performance levels do go up and down. But stats-wise, it's his best season for us. It's his most productive one. And if we've got a Reo Hatate that is less of the maverick, but still the exciting attacking player and more of a team player, which I think we're beginning to get, I can't wait to see him in the Hibs again next season. And I think Rodgers is that type of manager that once you buy into him, so it was the same with Ange, really. You have to buy into what they want you to do. But once you buy into what Brendan is asking you to do, I think he's with you all the way. And that's why certain players get a chance, and the guys like Nawrocki and Lagerbielke don't. They're not his type of player. They've not got his mentality. Reo, I either worry whether he had the mentality for it or not, but it seems like he does. And I would love us and going Kevin Keegan style here. I would really love it if we could keep him for next season, because he's a fantastic player when he's on form. And he's the type of player that we will need next season to have a successful Champions League campaign, to progress again in Europe. We'll need somebody like him that's prepared to do to play the pass that no one else is prepared to play.
I know, the game-changing pass. He's a playmaker. I'm just looking, I've mentioned this before, when he signed for Celtic, 75 games of football is all he had played. You know, that's 75 games of what you would say senior football in the J1 League is all we had played. He's played 54 games of football this season alone, which is every single game Celtic have been involved in. I learned during the commentary. If you look at last season, his first season under Brennan, he played 21 games, albeit some of that was due to injury. But he really is having like a breakout season this campaign. He scored double figures for the first time ever in his football career. He's hit 11 goals. I'm just having a look for his assists. He's hit 9 assists. So goal contributions, 20 from midfield. And like you say, Kevin, when you're looking at Champions League, you want to see peak Reo at that level throughout an entire campaign, and you want to see if he's able to, mix it with that level of player. I think he can. He's 27, but the interesting thing about Reo is he came to the game really late. You know, when he started playing regularly in the J League, he was 22, 23, you know, when he was actually playing his first 38 games in the J League 2020. So he's a player that, in terms of his athletic age, I think we would call it, he seems a wee bit younger because he's not got a lot of games in the tank. You know, you look at Callum McGregor, by the time he's 21, 22 in the games that he had played, because obviously he never played them for Celtic, but he'd gone to Notts County and he got his experience in there. You look at the games someone like Tierney had played by the age of 21. Reo's not had that. That's not been his kind of like formative years as a professional. And it does look as though he's getting to that point where he's unstoppable. Adam Ida, the big man, loads of stick at halftime. What's your thoughts now, ladies and gents that are tuning in? Were you giving him a hard time before his goal? Has it changed? Let's see some of the comments coming through. Pete, you're in. Pete McGee. Sorry, DD. I can't agree about Ralston. He was not good in the derby.
It's not me you should be apologising to. Ooh.
I think we've missed AJ big time. I think, Tory Ralston, absolutely. I thought he was brilliant today. That outside of the boot assist was fantastic. I want to see it in slow motion, super slow-mo, you know. I didn't think he was bad against Rangers. I've got to say, I didn't think he played that badly against Rangers, Chris.
No, and particularly not, given he's largely come in from the cold in moments this season. I thought he did well. Tony's he's very much a no frills type of player, despite the fact he's got moments of absolute brilliance in him. You know, whether it be goals, whether it be crosses, whether it be that amazing Maldini-esque pass today. He's a little bit of a strange one. I would almost wonder how he'd play if he was the regular right back. You know, if he somehow supplanted Alistair Johnson, would he take his game, up that level that we've seen so many players do? But I think that the biggest characteristic for Ralston is he's just that he's a very, very dependable hand. He comes in, does his job, does it honestly. He's not afraid to go and get a bit physical with the opposition players. And he's got great, great passing ability. I think really underrated passing ability. At times, I think he's been sometimes the best crosser of the ball in a park. So for me, Tony's someone that it'd be weird to think of Celtic these days without Tony Ralston in the squad. But it'd also be strange to think of Tony Ralston as your first choice right back, because he never quite seems to make that step up. And whether that's just lack of opportunity or maybe he's just at that kind of level where he's that very reliable, very trustworthy squad player that every team needs to be successul. But I thought today he performed admirably. I mean, there were points there where I couldn't have told the difference between him and AJ. Just the way he was playing, he was venturing forward and contributing to the play. So I really have always rated Tony. I like his character. I like the kind of attributes he brings to the table. So yeah, I'd like to see him get a wee run between now and the end of the season, and allow us to rehabilitate AJ, as effectively as possible.
Thanks for reading the memo I sent out.
No
with regards to Tony,
what
I find quite interesting about Tony Ralston is the fact that this, as a first-team player, is his 10th season at Celtic. So I know that, yes, he's had 3 loan deals out in that time, but he has made first-team appearances, including this season, in the last 10 seasons. So I'm now looking at his trophy haul because I had a stat last week or the week before where I was looking at James A. Forrest and Callum McGregor's games. So they've played over 1,000 games combined, which means that because they've won 53 trophies, correct me if I'm wrong, 53, something like that, they would have won a trophy on average every 20 games, Chris. And you and I were backstage with Chris Sutton last week talking about this. He found it quite funny that, what a stat that is. Every 20 games will give you a trophy. So I thought to myself, let's have a look at Tony Ralston, right? So Tony Ralston has now won 7 leagues for Celtic, 3 Scottish Cups, 4 League Cups, and he gets a trophy every 8.7 games as a Celtic player. That is astonishing, right?
Imagine telling your grandkids that. Imagine telling
that
your
must be the most in the history of Celtic Football Club. Every 8.7 games. Let's break it down in minutes. Every 8.7 games, Tony Ralston has got a winner's medal. The guy is an absolute freak of nature, and that's why he's the bricky. So there you go. Don't ever argue with our assessment of Tony Ralston. I remember one time during that horrible season, during the lockdown season, where we absolutely blew it in every shape and form you could imagine. And there was a game where, remember, we had the big outbreak after Julien, I think, maybe came back for Dubai with COVID. And we were playing just like, I think, the stadium manager got a game at left back and all that. And Tony Ralston was playing right back. And he got absolute dogs all the way through the game on the comments, on the social media. And I had the audacity to say he was my man of the match. Well, the stick I got just for even daring to say that Tony Ralston played well. And you look at him now and how he's turned it around. Kev, I mean, in all seriousness, the mental fortitude of that boy to go through like periods 18 months. He went through a period of 18 months not kicking a ball at Celtic, not being out on loan anywhere. Just kicking his heels, Scott Bain style. The mental fortitude to come through that and get his games and win a trophy every 8.7 matches is, I think it's to be applauded.
Yeah, it's a tremendous stat, isn't it? And Scott Bain must be up there though for minutes on Park to Trophies won as well.
You want me to check?
But go for it. But I mean, Ralston's the Tommy Burns of this team in the respect of the fan that's living the dream. And you know that every time when he steps out onto that park, he's just going to give it his all for you. He is I'm sorry to say it, Paul, he's a very limited football player. He's not a flashy guy at all in the way that he plays the game. But what you get from him is 100% commitment in every single game. And that sounds like it's the minimum that you should get from players, but you don't get it from everyone. So he gives you that every single time. To use another comparison, then he'll be the Roy Aitken type that would run through a brick wall for you. He will just do that. He will die on the pitch for Celtic if he thought he'd save a goal. And the mental fortitude of whatever it is to get through the period of not getting a game, that's to be talked up and lauded, because that is the type of thing that you and I would want to do. If you're at Celtic, you don't want to give up that dream. Many people have. He hasn't. He's stuck by it. He's obviously believed in himself and he's worked on his game because he has improved. The seasons when he was out on loan, it was at Dundee United and St Johnstone. I don't think anybody would have wanted him to come back really and challenge to be the right back at that time. His career at Celtic was over, but he's put his head down. He's worked through, and now I think what Chris was saying then as well, he's a more than capable second choice right back behind Johnson, to the point that maybe not for the course of a full season or for half a season, but for a short stretch of games, he can come in and you don't really notice that much of a drop off. And that's what you need around the team, players that will just come in, give it their all, and you don't really notice that the star player is out if it is just that kind of shorter period.
You just wonder sometimes, well, I do anyway, how long he can maintain that position within the Celtic squad. There's a professional pride. I'm looking at the games per season. He had a tremendous first season under Ange where he plays 47 games, which was more than the entirety of the games he had played before in his Celtic career. But since then, he's played 18, and now 19. So it's like you're saying, you're going to average roughly 20 games a season. Are you happy to do that at the age of 26 when you're Scotland's first choice right back? Other circumstances have created that opportunity for him. But he's got 20 caps for Scotland. He is Stevie Clarke's go-to right back at the moment. How often do you get a situation where you're not the first choice, but you're still getting a game for Scotland? So, there comes a moment, I think, in Tony Ralston's career where 10 years down the line, you think, where's it going to go for him the next 5 years? It's very interesting. And I know I'm biased because he is my favourite player. He has taken that mantle. Pete McGee, you're in. We're going to run through some more comments before the guys go away. And by the way, it was commented by my own colleagues that they thought I was on the gin today. This, my friend, is sparkling water with a little bit of lime. And I'll tell you why. Because I got an email yesterday, right? Believe it or not, honestly, luckiest man on the planet. I'm the fan in a jersey because on the 19th of May, I'm playing at Celtic Park. There's some kind of charitable thing that William Hill have pulled together as the main sponsors of the league. They must have got, I don't know, loads and loads of people pulling out. I've been invited to play. If you want a right good laugh, it's on the 19th. And they're doing it, it's a Monday morning. So not many people will see my attempts to be a footballer. So I'm on the water. I'm on the detox, and I'll be on the treadmill as well before that. P. McGee, isn't it ironic that the three players who get most of the regular criticism are the three scorers in a convincing display against the form team in the SPFL? I think one of those guys, actually, it's not been so much getting stick. It's because, absolutely, genuinely and authentically, he has gone way off the boil compared to the Nicholas Kuhn of the first half of the season, Chris. But in the last couple of weeks in dispatches, we've seen, wee flashes of the Nicholas Kuhn that got us excited, got us on the edge of our seats. And I'll tell you something, I loved that wee flashpoint the day where he ends up getting booked. I like to see players that actually care. And you know what? Big Eda's the man that actually is a peacemaker. Wee Kuhn was like Scrappy-Doo out of Scooby-Doo, let me at him and all that. But I like to see a wee bit of bite.
Yeah, it's wee man syndrome. I've got it myself, so I can empathise.
I think your average height between the three contributors certainly is not 6 foot.
It's not great.
I'm the tallest of the three of us. That's it. Even with the Johnny Bravo, I'm the tallest of the three.
That's the only reason I do this with the hair. It's just to give me a couple of extra inches, But no, listen. I agree with you on Kuhn. I think well, we praised Kuhn to the hilt for large parts this season, and it was highly merited because he was. I think at one point you'd have probably put your house on him being Player of the Year. He was impacting games so meaningfully, so often and so consistently. He had a couple of wee injury niggles. I remember he took the sore one at the face as well, and he seemed to take a wee wobble at that time. Which, look, you quite understand, must be so difficult if you've got a player who can perform week on week through an entire season. You've got one of the best players on the planet, and the last player I can remember could do that was probably Henrik Larsson. So, and according to Martin O'Neill, didn't do that every game. So
I get one bad game.
One bad game. Missed a penalty, but it was unlucky according to Martin, if I remember right. Yeah, but Kuhn, I can forgive going off form for a period, because I think it happens to every single player, and it's up to both the player to come through that period and the manager to try and manage the player through that period. I think there were, if you take the eye test into consideration, there were elements of the way he was playing which seemed to be perceived as a lack of effort. And I think when the fans are collectively looking at you saying you're not putting the effort in, you're not running into challenges, and you're not, putting your body on the line to score goals, I think that's when, as a player, you've got a bit of a problem, because whether it's justified or not, or whether people are getting the wrong end of the stick, I think the challenge is then on the player to try and turn that perception around. And I felt as though it didn't look like Kuhn was doing that. Now, I'd never question a player's professionalism or their work ethic or anything like that. I think we don't see what they do behind the scenes, and we don't know what circumstances are playing under, etc. But I think Nicholas Kuhn, for me, he looked forlorn, he looked unfocused, and he looked like he was, he was certainly very hesitant to go and make those dart and runs where you do have to put your body on the line. And as a fan, you really don't want to see your players doing that, particularly when you've still got, at that time, 2 trophies to go and play for. So I think you have to understand and you have to accept as a player, particularly at Celtic, that you're going to become subject to a bit of criticism. But it's how you respond to that and how you come through that. And I think what we've seen, albeit not to the same extent, but I think what we've seen in the last few matches is a move towards getting back to the Kun that we saw in the early part of the season. Really trying to get on the ball, really trying to make something happen. I thought today he cut inside too much for me. Cut inside too much and try to take a shot, and he was almost like channeling Aidan McGeady at his worst. Where just continually cutting in, trying to take the shot when there are maybe better options on. But ultimately, he gets a goal. He contributed, I thought, throughout, and he looked hungry, and he showed that wee bit of anger and aggression as well, which you want to see in your players. So I agree with you. I want to see players show that emotion and that desire to win, even if it means that they get involved in a wee bit of handbags. I quite like to see that. So, yeah, fingers crossed we get a little bit more of that between now and the cup final, and he builds on that momentum and goes in there in the best possible form. Because on his day, I think Kun is up there with the absolute best players in the team. But he must be able to traverse those challenging periods. Otherwise, you'll not succeed at this club.
No, because you're under scrutiny.
Yeah.
I'm just going to, as an example, bring this up. Right, any other player, right, comes in 25 years of age, Nicholas Kun, right, and this season his his appearances have amounted to 48 appearances, which incidentally is more football than he's ever played in a season in his entire career, right? And I think that was a point that Brendan made, a very important point. Him and Engels are not used to playing 50 games a season. So that in itself is probably going to result in some dips in form, right? So 48 games, he scored this season, looking at this, all right, 21 goals and 15 assists. Now, if you're looking at that on paper, you're thinking, what a season he's having. And we won the treble. And, he scored against Bayern Munich in that game where we were just seconds away from taking up the extra time. So on paper, Kevin, you're thinking, what a season he's had. It's the eye test because he went a wee bit off form for a period of time, right? Because, I think when you're getting hooked at half-time, he's actually been taken off at half-time 3 times this season. One of them was injury, though. On one occasion, he was injured. The other 2 times, it was because he was rotten. And that's what's happened. He did not play well. But it could well be the fact that, him and Engels, they're not used to playing 50, 55 games a season. That's what you do if you're a first pick for Celtic and you don't allow that level and that standard to drop. One of the moments Chris is talking about, and I think I was critical of him, was against St Johnstone, and I think he was hooked at half-time in that game, the 1-0 defeat at McDermott Park, where he didn't put himself on the line to get to that ball. It was a 60-40 in his favour, and it was cleared, and he could have just put it in the net. So I think there's a bit of a shock to the system of a lot of these players, Kevin, when they come to a club. Even though he's played for big clubs, he's been in the system at Ajax, he's been in the system at Bayern Munich. But to play every single week and be under that scrutiny, it must come as a shock to the system. But he seems to have got over it. Let's hope he has got over it and he's moving back into the form that made him a front runner for Player of the Year this season, Kev.
Yeah, let's hope so. But I think that so a couple of the key points with him is it's more he'd been in the system at the big teams. So your Ajax and your Bayern Munich before, but he'd never made the grade. He didn't play regularly for them. Where he's been playing prior to coming to us, like you say, he's never played 50 games a season. He's never played games with the level of intensity that we demand. And that's both in the style of the play that we will have, the expectation of the fans, and in the need to win every single game. You just don't get that pressure anywhere else. So I'd suspect it's a massive change in mindset and change of scenery for a player when they come into that if you're just not used to it. And it does link back to what I think Chris had mentioned it as well with Engels. He's coming from Augsburg in Germany, where for them a good season is surviving in the Bundesliga.
Mm-hmm.
To survive in the Scottish Premier League is not a good season for Celtic. We need to win the league. We need to win the League Cup and the Scottish Cup, and we need to progress in Europe. So the challenges that these boys are facing are ones that they have never faced before. So for Engels, I think he'll have a year of experience behind him with that. He'll know exactly what he's up against next season. And I think he comes back a better player because he's got that knowledge behind him.
Mm-hmm.
With Kun, this is again kind of at 25, 26 years old. This is his breakthrough season. as a first-team regular in a big club that demands success, I think it did take his toll on him for a bit. And I think the fact that he was averaging, what was it, a goal or an assist every 68 minutes or something like that at one point in the season, elevates expectations that everyone has of him. Realistically, he was never going to keep that kind of record going for the entire season. But once you've set the bar so high, the drop becomes very noticeable. I'm not sure what his goals and assists per minute record would be now or per 90, but it is now. I'd say if it's still somewhere about 1 every 100 minutes, which it must be around about there, I guess, or 120 minutes, then he's still having a very good season. If you extrapolate his goals and assists over the whole season, if he'd been really consistent and he was getting the same numbers, no one would talk about it, or no one would have any complaints, rather. It would be considered a really good season. And the numbers back it up. It's just the fact that he's had that drop. Of course.
I'll jump in because it's a great point you make. I haven't checked this for a long time, but we used to talk about it, didn't we? He's actually played 3,148 minutes. He has scored 21 goals and had 15 assists, which means that he has contributed to a goal every 87 minutes in a Celtic jersey this season. So if he's on the park, he's either setting a goal up or scoring. And that's even though he's had that wee dip in form, Kev. So it's a great point.
Yeah. So from us with the eye test, as he mentioned there as well, it looks like a massive dip, like his form fell off a cliff. I'm sure someone said that on this show before. But he's still managing to get a goal contribution every single game that he plays for us, every single full 90 minutes. That's incredible. Even with the fall, that is incredibly consistent over the course of a full season. Every player will have ups and downs in a season. I think he's coming out of his down period now. He's coming back into an up. He's back amongst the goals. He's back creating the goals. And he's doing it at a very, very pleasing time of the season for us, because although the league's won, we still have one more really massive game to come in a cup final. And if he's going to peak again for the second time of this season at the time of the cup final, then that's exactly what we're looking for.
Great points, Kev. Absolutely. We are very hard on players. We really are, as football fans, very hard on players. The other one, of course, is Adamida, and I think I would also point out in terms of, if we're going to give everybody a wee bit of leeway with games that they've played, he had a very productive season in his first campaign for Celtic because he had played 34 times for Norwich. He comes up to Celtic and plays 19 games. So that was the first time he'd ever played over 50 games of football. But at Celtic, we're like, right, do that again. So he's played another 50 this season, and we want you to do that again. And you've got to maintain that level of consistency over the 50 games, and you've got to score 20 plus goals, or we're going to be on your back. We really are very, very demanding. I don't have an issue with it. I absolutely don't have an issue with it. But you see a lot of Celtic players who come to this football club, and it is a culture shock to them. Because, as you say, Kev, very, very promising young player over in the Bundesliga. But how often, when you come off the park having not won a game for Augsburg, are you going to have your performance and every kick of the ball scrutinised on an Augsburg state of mind? I don't know if it exists and how many people subscribe to it, but you get my point. Thanks everybody for getting involved. We've actually run over. Sorry about that. I don't know if your dinner's ready or you've got a barbecue on the go at the back garden there. But there you go, you're ready, and you can get stuck into a few beverages. I'll stick to the waters. I'm playing for Celtic, and by the way, it'll be my second appearance for Celtic. First time my wee fella went to Celtic Park, I was playing in one of these charity games. Tom Boyd was my manager. He gave me 70 minutes. I will be forever grateful for those 70 minutes. I wasn't that fit, I've got to say. That was 6 years ago, so I better be fitter this time round. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Always an absolute pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Get involved with our live event with Stubbsy and Tosh McKinley. Ticket link underneath the video. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and join us again on Monday at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.